Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I want to talk to y'all about the episode in season 1 called Summer of Love. It's an episode I touched on before, and I made certain points about it. I want to make certain points on it again, only because I was thinking about this episode a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday, I think it was. And I just feel like it's so much wasted potential in this episode. So I was thinking about this. It's funny how I came to like thinking about this episode. I don't watch award shows no more 'cause I just don't see the point. I used to do it when I was a kid, and so the Oscars was a couple of nights ago, and Ashley Graham was interviewing Hugh Grant, and he was being a complete jerk to her. And so people online were debating, is he just a jerk or is he just British? Implying that British people are pretty like rude and stuck up and stuff like that. And so many people are debating that left and right. And my conclusion in that is probably just both. Because, it's just people are people. People are going to be rude no matter what country you're from. But British people just seem to be a tidbit more rude than most other people and stuff. Plus, Hugh Grant, I mean, how do you cheat on Elizabeth Hurley with an ugly prostitute? How? How do you mess that up? So in my opinion, he's a little punk. And so like then that made me think of a phrase I once heard the actor who plays Rembrandt say that, when it comes to John had like a temper and he was very opinionated and he would slam his fist on like the table talking about this is rubbish and everything like that, talking about like the script of Sliders and how they could be doing so much better and stuff like that. And it made me stop and think about what exactly season was he talking about? Now, of course, obviously he's talking about season 3, but perhaps there are some season 1 and season 2 episodes he was talking about as well. And so I started thinking about, what episodes had wasted potential? And I thought about Summer of Love. Now, Summer of Love is actually an episode I think is hilarious. And I mean, it's hilarious. And it's hilarious because of like all the hijinks that happen in it. But then I stopped and I thought about something. What exactly was the point of this episode? Not only did it air out of order, but it seems to be just filler. And back when I used to watch this, I was probably like maybe a preteen or something like that. The idea of a filler episode just never occurred to me because, coming off cartoons and kid shows and watching like, things like sitcoms on ABC and Fox and stuff like that, like Married with Children, Family Matters on Full House and stuff like that. You never really get the concept of a filler episode, but that's basically what this episode is. It's just mindless filler. And I remember Tracy Tomei said that, originally his whole plan for Sliders was to have Quinn and Rembrandt just go off on their own little adventure while the professor just like saves the day. They didn't say nothing about Wade and everything. And I thought to myself, okay, it kind of makes sense for Rembrandt to go off in his own direction and do whatever he wants because he's not a scientist, he's not part of the group, and he doesn't want to be there. But it doesn't make sense for Quinn to go off and have like hijinks and stuff like that because he was the smart one who created all this. And I've talked about before how it bugs the crap out of me, how Rembrandt was the one who just ran off and did whatever he was. It really made him look like a terrible character back in the day. Because here they are sliding into a new world. He has no idea if, Quinn is going to be able to reset the timer and go back home early while he's off having a good time. Not only that, but the worlds they land on are always terrible and is always dire. And so while they're trying to fix the situation while trying to get out there early or trying to save that world, he's busy just having a good time. That always bugged me how they wrote his character and his character only doing crap like that. The same way how they wrote Wade as always being a damsel in distress or somebody who's taken out of an episode because either she's sick or whatever. And in this episode, she is taken completely out. And in this episode, it has Rembrandt being just off on his own, doing whatever he wants. And when I stopped and I started thinking about this episode, I started thinking about this episode does not teach no type of moral lesson. It doesn't save a world or anything like that. And normally in Sliders, there's always a moral lesson to be learned. That's why this show is so great. It's like Star Trek. You learn something. And so, like, but in this episode, not only do nobody on that world learn a moral lesson, but they don't really put an end to the Australian and American war that is going on. And not only that, but like, um, crap, now I lost my train of thought. And so like, let's see, no moral lesson, didn't save the day. Um, Something else I was gonna say. Anyway, it'll probably come to me later. But it was just like, there was really no point in this episode. And the reason for that is like, first you have to understand what this episode is about. Well, this episode, like, it starts off pretty interestingly. The FBI, they raided Banish's place and they need him to go look at something. They need him to go to Quinn's, like, basement and look at all the weird stuff he came up with, all the scientific stuff, because he's been missing along with other people. Also, the Asian detective, may he rest in peace, he passed away many, many, many years ago and stuff. And so Benish, of course, he's checking out Quinn's stuff and he realizes something. Quinn did it. He did the impossible. He cracked the code that nobody else on that earth was able to crack. Well, along with help with his double and everything, but mostly Quinn did like all the groundwork and his double just like put the last little tidbits on there. Basically, Quinn cracked the code to opening the gateway to other parallel dimensions, proving that there is indeed a multiverse. Something that has been theorized, but that's about it. And so then it goes to the Sliders on the world, and they're not happy being there. And then they find out, oh wait, they're on a world that has like a mutant bug and everything. It's a spider with a hybrid of a wasp, and they're taking over the world. Kind of like the what was that thing that came to America about 2 years ago? It was around the pandemic time. I think it was like a king wasp or something. No, a hornet. No, killer wasp. No, it was some kind of like bee type thing. It was like a bee that was like really dangerous and they can kill like small animals and stuff. I forget what they're called, but they came to America from another country. And you haven't heard about it since. It's like, did we get rid of it? Are they still around? Are they gonna kill us? But these are like really dangerous bees and everything. That I'm talking about us. And it's weird how the news hasn't even talked about that yet. I know they was trying to find them and cultivate them and capture them, but there's been no word on that yet. Anyway, so a similar thing happened in the show, but it's like a hybrid of a spider and a wasp. And so they're swarming everywhere and killing lots of people and stuff. You have to get indoors. Well, of course, they're outside. So they have to activate the timer and get on out of there. Well, when they activate the timer, I think it's busted at this time. I'm not sure, but it opens, yeah, it's like busted and then opened up a portal and Rembrandt and Wade went in. Then it closes. Professor and Quinn are screwed, but then it reopens up again and then they're able to slide. When they slide, they realize something. They've been separated. Now, at this point in time, they don't know they're on the same Earth. But so Quinn and Professor, they're all like, oh no, the timer's busted and all this other stuff. And of course, some of the wasps, they traveled through the portal and they landed on the Professor. Quinn knocks him out with a rock by mistake, and that makes for a very hilarious thing. Now, after this is one problem I have with the episode. What happened to the killer wasp? They were never explained after this point, and they was never explained in happening in the city. So it's kind of like, here's this deadly, dire thing, and there's multiple ones in this new world, but you don't hear about it. And I feel like that was a huge missed opportunity to have, like, a really cool, impactful episode. Basically, the strangers came into another world and they affected the status quo. And by doing that, they unleashed a killer animal onto the world that's gonna multiply very quickly and everything. And that could have made for a really good episode. That ties into something the professor tells Wade at the end of the episode, and I will get to that a little bit later on. And so I always felt like, oh, that was a missed opportunity because, in our world, when we go to other countries, we're not supposed to bring back any foreign animal, creature, bugs, whatever, because they can mess up our ecosystem. And that's why you have to go through customs and everything. And that was a really huge missed opportunity they could have reflected on. Now, when it comes to Wade and Rembrandt, their portal opened up in front of a bunch of hippie people. Why? This is why it's called the Summer of Love. In their world, it revolves around that of the 1960s. It's present day, but it has a 1960 vibe with hippies. They was young, they was free, they was getting high, and they was banging and slinging. And so, that's just how it was in the 60s. I have no idea because I was born in the 80s. And so, they are going through a war on that earth. It's the Australians and it's the Americans. Why? Part of the reason why I'm making this video. We don't know why and everything for the most part. And so that was a huge missed opportunity to find out why Australia and why the Americans are going to war and everything like that. And so the hippie people, they turned out to be rich and everything because their parents are rich and they live in mansions, but they choose to live outside and, and all this other stuff. Well, this is a reflection on our 1960s when we had the Vietnam War and everything. A war I don't know nothing about because, like I said, I don't even try to bother with all those wars. I wasn't even born those times. Yeah, it's important to know so you don't make those same mistakes. But hey, I'm not in politics, so I ain't gonna make that mistake. And so I really don't feel like hearing about a war that murdered tons of people and everything like that. I mean, it's sad what's going on overseas right now, and so I am invested in that because I am in the present day. But when it comes to older wars, hey, look, I just need to know the world wars, and I just need to know about the Civil War, and I'm good. And stuff like that. And so, this is now bringing up a problem I have in the episode. Rembrandt left Wade behind, telling her that, he's going to go look for his friends and their friends and everything to see if they ended up on that world. If not, they're stuck there for the rest of their lives and everything. So he ditches her, and he ditches her for the entire episode. And that really bugged the snot rockets out of me. I'm just kind of dude, she is now your friend. She wasn't before, but she's your friend now because, the whole sliding implications and, the crisis that they're in. She's the only person you have connected to your old world. And so y'all need to stay together in case, something bad happens. Because for the most part, we don't know nothing about the people of this world. We don't know if they're good. We don't know if they're bad. We don't know if they like to harvest organs from young people like the other world in season 3. We don't know nothing like that. So he just left her with a bunch of strangers. And do you know what he did when he went to go look for Quinn and the professor? He didn't even really look for them. He went to his house just to, get some memories and stuff. And he sees that there's a funeral going on. So he goes in, he eats a donut. He realizes, oh, wait, it's his character or his double that died supposedly on that world. So he gets all upset when he starts to hear people badmouth him. And that causes him to diverge from looking for Quinn and the professor and helping Wade out. And so he becomes very selfish, and interfere in the lives of his double. And then once he sees that his double is married to a woman that he was once in love with on his world, he decides he's gonna play the role of his double. Now he's been gone for at least a day and a half, maybe two at the most. And he just left Wade and everything. And so like he's banging and he's slinging like his double's wife. He's attending to his double's kid, but then he quickly realizes something. His wife on that world is mean. And basically on that world, his double is whipped. So he has to do everything, all the house chores and everything like that. And it's something he regrets now, but he's too far in deep. And the only thing that causes him to leave and continue to look for Quinn and the professor and eventually get back to Wade is when he finds out his double is actually alive. And his double's wife is not too happy. She pulls out a shotgun and she starts shooting at him. And he takes off and he drives off. And all I could think of is, dude, not only are you not trying to find out about the world you're on, because think about it, for all he knows, he's stuck there. So he needs to know how that world operates, but he doesn't even try to find out. Not to mention, he left Wade behind. And in fact, let's talk about Wade, because I feel bad for her, because every show you're on, there's going to be stereotypes, and every character has to be different from another. That's just the norm of how television is. You can't have everybody act the same because that's going to be very boring. And so Rembrandt is stuck in the role of the stereotypical black dude who's just kind of like, they have him in a way where he's kind of lazy. He doesn't help out in the first season and stuff like that. And I get it because he doesn't know what he's doing, but they make him into like, just the person who's gonna like abandon you, and I hate that. Then Wade is a stereotypical female who's always forgotten about or is a damsel in distress. And so in this entire episode, she decides she's gonna talk to the hippie people, and she's gonna talk about her philosophies, her spiritualities and stuff like that. I can't say that word. I get tongue tied. Spiritualology, is that it? And her ideologies and stuff. But we don't really get to see that. We only get a brief clip of her talking about how things operate on her world and what she believes in. So it's not so much she's talking about how life on her world is. She's just giving her opinion, reshaping the way these people think. And it's very brief, and then that's it. And then we go to like Professor and Quinn. And so it's like they didn't even spend more than like 5 minutes on Wade. She's just literally forgotten about, similar to the world where there was a virus and she got sick. She's basically just like taken out. And it happens a lot with her because she, of course, doesn't know what she's doing. She's not smart like Quinn and the Professor. She has computer skills, but we really don't really find out how good she is about that until one episode of season 2 and a few episodes in season 3. And so I feel like there's a missed opportunity to at least hear what Wade had to say. You know what I'm saying? That could have been nice moral teaching lessons and this and that. You know what I'm saying? And it would have been nice to give her some screen time. But it's sadly she's literally forgotten about in this episode. But then we get back to Quinn and the Professor. So they're in their own little hijinks and stuff. It seems that the people of that world are very tense. The people who aren't hippies hate hippies, very similar to how our world was and everything. And so like they have to get like a motel, and the woman thinks that there's some type of like domestic terrorist who's going to take out the president because he's supposed to visit and everything. Their president is not our president. At least I don't think he was. I forget who it was. I forget. I think Oliver something. I think it's Oliver North. So yeah, he wasn't our president and stuff. And so we don't get to find nothing out about him. And so the police, they start harassing Quinn and the Professor because the Professor has like a hippie bandana on his head from when he busted his head open with the rock and everything. And so the professor gets like cranky and stuff like that because he's all like, get a job, hippie. He's like, I do have a job. And so basically, Quinn and the professor, the only thing they do in this entire episode is they try to recreate, or the professor wants to recreate the sliding technology and everything. This is part of how I felt like he was a little shady because, you know, their timer's busted. Quinn's the one who made all that. But of course, the professor, like he said in the pilot, he wants to take a check under the hood and everything to see how it operates. And we know his double is pretty shady and everything from season 2, who takes all the credit for sliding for himself. And so now if the professor can help Quinn rebuild this thing, get back to the world, he gets to put his name on the byline and everything and gets to be famous as well. And so like, so they're taking shifts trying to figure out, you know, the equations and this and that. And the professor is very shocked to see that Quinn finished an entire board all by himself with no help. And while Quinn was out and the professor was asleep, Quinn actually went to go look for Wade and the professor. And he didn't stop until he, like, you know, got back and had to get some supplies and finish the board and everything. And so, but of course, they get busted by the FBI. And the FBI think they're making some kind of like, you know, weapon of mass destruction because the president's in town. And it's only then and there they hear Rembrandt singing in the street, plot armor and everything. And so they have to do what they have to do to get to him. They hop in the car, they drive off. And so now they're back with the hippie people. They finally went back to Wade. And oh, by the way, Quinn does mention what the war is about. But I forgot what it's about. And he just quickly mentions it. And that's why I don't remember what the war is about. And so, like, I feel like it was a huge missed opportunity to actually get to see, you know, some people like fighting each other in the war, or people being oppressed by the war, or even seeing people protest the war like they did in our 1960s with the Vietnam War. We could have seen people like, you know, talking about like, oh, I don't want to be drafted to the war, only for them to be like arrested or something like that. Like, give us something to sink our teeth into, like, you know what I'm saying? And because we see Benish, you know, and he's like, you know, for the young Republicans, and he's trying to get people to join. And the professor is shocked to see that he's like short hair and clean shaven and stuff like that. Well, not so much. Is he clean shaven? I can't remember. But anyway, he looks completely different than what he normally looks like. So when they get back to Wade, the professor overhears Wade telling people, you know, how to live their lives and her beliefs and stuff like that. And the professor gets upset with her, and he tells her that we should not interfere with these people's status quo. Our ideologies are completely different from those people, and we should not interfere. Something Star Trek talks about with the Prime Directive over and over in the older Star Trek seasons, but not in the new stuff. And so, like, she gets pissed at him and is talking about, you know, if she can bring a little knowledge from her world onto their world to help make it better, then she said we should be all for it. But we don't know how terrible their world is. That's the problem. It's never really explained why their world is so terrible. So why is she trying to fix it? And then she shoves him, talking about don't tell her what to do. And so this argument never really gets resolved in a really good, meaningful way. Because it's never really truly set up properly and everything. And of course, this whole idea of not interfering in other people's worlds will be brought up several times throughout the course of the series. And so, of course, they slide, and and the hippie people don't want her to go, but they have to and everything. And then, boom, they're on that world where the polar ice caps have melted, and, you know, the world is flooding and everything. And then they slide from that world onto that British world. And so, although I like the humor and everything in this episode because it is hilarious, I just feel like this is a pointless episode because it didn't teach us nothing morally and it didn't explain much of what happened in that world. And of course, when you go to all these parallel worlds, you want to know how different they are from ours and everything. And so I just think it's a huge missed opportunity. And I can see why some people were turned off in season 1 by episodes like this, because it really didn't explain much of anything and stuff. And now I just lost my train of thought again. Let's see. I was talking about how people got turned off by this episode. Oh, now I remember. And this every season has that filler episode in the show. And that's fine and that's okay. My only problem is, why have a filler episode so early? Well, when did this episode air? Did it air early or did it air mid? I can't even remember, because it's out of order. And because it's out of order, it was technically supposed to air very, very, very early on and everything. And so why have a filler episode very early on in the season when people aren't quite sure what this show is about and they're trying to get into it? So that's just my thing on this episode.